This week, Catholic bishops are meeting in Baltimore to discuss the priest sex abuse crisis in the American church and will vote on measures to hold themselves accountable.
They're known as brides of Christ, revered for their quiet service, not for speaking out. But that's beginning to change.
Well, I joined the convent in 2003, and I was raped in 2008.
Raped, she says, by a priest. A devout Catholic from Germany, Doris Wagner was 24 years old, living and working at this religious community just outside the Vatican.
And he came into the room, closed the door behind him, was sitting on my right hand on the sofa, and he just started to undress me.
When she told her superiors, she says the priest went unpunished, allowing him to rape her again and again.
And this is Europe, where Vatican City is located. But we're gonna have to zoom in way further to see where it is. There's Italy, there's Lazio, there's the city of Rome, and here is Vatican City, the smallest country in the world in terms of both physical size at around 0.44 square kilometers and population.
Before we explore the power of this huge religious institution, let's first look at its history. Vatican City was founded in 1929 following the signing of the Lateran Pacts, a treaty and financial agreement between the Holy See, an ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the Catholic Church, and the Kingdom of Italy. It's not only home to the Pope, but also a raft of iconic art and rich architecture, including the Sistine Chapel, famous for Michelangelo's ceiling. As a sovereign state, it is recognized under international law, so though Vatican City is situated slap bang in the middle of Rome, you can think of it like a mini country with its own jurisdiction. The Vatican has a judge, a tribunal, an appeals court, and a Supreme Court. These were all put into effect in November 1987, and their role is to serve and exercise authority in the name of the Pope. Vatican City has a population of 1,000, most of whom are working as part of the church, cardinals and bishops, members of the Curia, seminarian students, and visiting clergy. The Vatican is not just a center of the Catholic religion, it's the center of government for Catholicism. So where does the Pope fit in? The Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church worldwide, so if the Vatican was a business, he could be likened to a CEO. Or if the Vatican were a government, then he would be the president. The College of Cardinals elects the Pope, and he holds all legislative, executive, and judicial powers.
To understand the Vatican, there are two people and two things you need to know about: the famous Pope, the incredibly confusing Holy See, the country of Vatican City, and along with that, the almost completely unknown King of Vatican City. But first, the Pope, who gets a throne to sit upon and from which he acts as the bishop for all the Catholics in Rome. Actually, all bishops in the Catholic Church get their own thrones, but because the Bishop of Rome is also the Pope, his throne is special and has its own special name: the Holy See. Every time a Pope dies or retires, there is a sort of Game of Thrones to see which of the bishops will next get to occupy the Holy See. So while popes come and go, the throne is eternal, and as such, the name the Holy See not only refers to the throne, but also all the rules that make the Catholic Church the Catholic Church. When Mussolini crafted that aforementioned deal, technically he gave the land of Vatican City to the Holy See, which, believe it or not, is a legal corporate person in international law. Basically, every time you hear the words the Holy See, think Catholic Church Incorporated, of which the Pope is the CEO. Now, back to the King. The King of Vatican City has absolute unchecked power within the country's borders, and his presence makes Vatican City one of only 6 remaining absolute monarchies in the world, including Brunei, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Swaziland. The King's absolute power is why Vatican City can't join the European Union, because only democracies are allowed. Though Vatican City does, strictly speaking, have a legislative branch of government staffed by cardinals appointed by the Pope, the King of Vatican City can overrule their decisions at any time for any reason. So why do you never hear about the King of Vatican City? Because though King and Pope are 2 different roles, they just happen to be occupied by the same person at the same time, which has the funny consequence that because the Pope is elected and the King is all-powerful, but they're the same guy, it makes Vatican City the world's only elected, non-hereditary absolute monarchy. It's this dual role that makes untangling Vatican City so difficult, because the Pope, depending on the situation, acts either as the King of the country of Vatican City or the Pope of the Holy See. For example, the United Nations has the Holy See See, the corporation, as a member, but not Vatican City, the actual country. And the Holy See gives passports to Vatican City citizens that other countries accept, even though those passports come from a company, not a country.
You're pulled in such a strong direction and you don't know why, but at the same time you know exactly why.
Norbert began as a reform movement. He wanted clergy that were educated and that had a common vision for life.
The biggest thing that drew me to St. Norbert Abbey was community life. As Norbertines, we're canons regular. We're not monks. We're not das and priests. We live a balanced life as Norbertines.
We're contemplatives in action. We work out in the apostolate with other Norbertines, or we're engaged in internal ministry. We Norbertines are blessed to serve the young and the old, the rich and the poor, the imprisoned and the free. No longer I, but Christ who lives within me.
Part of the Norbertine charism is the word communio. You know, it means with one. We're called to live with one another. If people would come and visit, they would recognize the joy that we have here. And it's not our joy, it's sharing in the joy that Christ has offered us.
It's about coming together as brothers, as friends, to live holy lives of action and contemplation. We're all connected truly and really, not just because I know you, but because as human beings, we share in the image of God. We share as one body in Christ.
Story after story like Wagner's is reaching a crescendo. In India, a bishop currently faces charges for repeatedly raping a former Mother Superior, and a recent investigation by the Associated Press found cases of abuse across 4 continents. Now, the Vatican can no longer ignore the scandal. This year, Pope Francis made a shocking admission and acknowledged what had been a long-standing dirty secret of the Roman Catholic Church, that some priests had been sexually abusing nuns. It was a stain they could keep under wraps. That is, until the Me Too movement. Now, religious women are beginning to speak out, and a Nuns Too era has been born. And in February, published an article accusing the all-powerful priesthood of not only exploiting them for sex, but first and foremost, for their labor.
Dal lavoro più elevato, che è il lavoro.
It happens as high as the Vatican ministries, where women carry out secretarial work and translations, but they can never be promoted, and the men get all the credit. They also exploit nuns as housekeepers. They do all of the cleaning, prepare all of the food without fixed hours, all day, every day. Priests see this almost as their right to take advantage of women.
They're not paid for their work. There's no chance of advancement. Some people have likened this mistreatment to slavery. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Given this habit of servitude, it's easy to understand how it can morph into sexual exploitation.
Doris Wagner says that's what happened to her in Rome.
I was only working in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, cleaning. Anybody who wants to become a nun wants to serve and wants to give herself to God. And that's why it is so easy to abuse nuns, because they are so ready to listen to others who tell them how they are supposed to be.
They tell them, keep quiet or our congregation will be persecuted. These women can't even contemplate leaving because they don't have any alternatives. They have no trade, no support group. They've severed ties with their families, so they are forced to endure this abuse that often leads to pregnancy, and the priests or bishops force them to have abortions.
So nuns are forced by the fathers of these children, by priests, to have abortions?
Sì, è una cosa ipocrita.
Yes, and these poor women now have to live with the anguish of having committed a mortal sin. We have many testimonies from nuns who had more than one abortion in this way.
A report alleging a cover-up of Catholic priest sex abuses dating back decades. A grand jury in Pennsylvania just issued its report. It found evidence of more than 300 predator priests, all accused of sexually abusing more than 1,000 child victims. And that's just the witnesses who came forward.
1,000 identifiable victims, 300 predator priests who were just repeat offenders for years. This happened over 70 years in 6 of Pennsylvania's Catholic dioceses.
The reason why we are here this morning is because about a third of the clergy members that are listed in that very damaging and disturbing report were from this diocese. So that is why we have been attending masses here, speaking to members of the congregation. And many people here say that these apologies from the Vatican to local church officials is simply not enough. They want a full admission from the Catholic Church of what they believe has been decades of covering up.
They wanted to cover up the cover-up. They sought to do the same thing that senior church leaders in the diocese we investigated have done for decades. Bury the sexual abuse by priests upon children and cover it up forever.
37 of them in Allentown, 20 in Greensburg, 45 priests in Harrisburg, 99 priests accused of this in Pittsburgh, 59 priests in Scranton. I mean, the numbers are just so staggering of how this was allowed to happen.
They're staggering.
Seemingly with impunity. And
This example must be well over 2,000 years old, but is it really the same symbol as we see in later examples from Northern Europe? Possibly, but some of the oldest alleged examples hardly resemble the symbol. This one was painted on the ceiling of the Polyphemus cave in Sicily and may be 5,000 years old, and in which case it's the oldest of them all. But is it really the same symbol? If it is, then we can rule out an Indo-European origin for the symbol, but I'm not convinced. This example on an Etruscan jar from 600 BC is more convincing. Etruscans were not Indo-European, but they were in contact with Indo-European peoples. The placement of the symbol next to people having sex supports a connection to fertility, at least in this context. We can also see the symbol on Cretan coins from ancient Greece, where it represents the labyrinth of the Minotaur. According to that legend, Theseus landed at the island of Delos on his way back from Crete and instituted a ritual dance to commemorate his journey through that labyrinth. And this dance was around the temple of Apollo, for that god was said to have been born on Delos. Thus the symbol in Greece was associated with the ritual dance, which was associated with Apollo, which is why some labyrinth coins have his head on the reverse. However, this masculine god may have usurped a goddess who the symbol originally represented, for Homer tells us that the labyrinth of Crete was devised for Ariadne, the mistress of the labyrinth.